Welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host Matjash, and I have with me Andrew Gabelić, Croatian last name. He is in Mexico, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Majas.
So you have a website that's entirely dedicated towards numerology. So you specialize entirely in that, and I think that's fascinating because I think a lot of people nowadays do not specialize in one thing, and they're masters as well in many things. Not that it's bad, it's
hmm
just that I think what you are doing, you can go deeper because you are in one thing only, right?
hmm Yes.
So how did you decide to go into numerology? I find that fascinating.
How did I decide? I
Yes.
think, I mean, I think it's a long journey, but I'll summarize it by saying that when I was a kid, I was very close to my grandmother, and my grandmother was a very mystical person. And I mean, right now it's very popular to do crystals and astrology and cards and numerology and all. It's like there's a resurgence of it. But in the 90s, she was like the weird one.
Right.
Like it was just not common, but like she was like, and we're in Mexico and everybody's Catholic. She was not religious, but she loved all this like alternative spirituality stuff, and I really loved her. So even as a kid, I would go to her house and I would see her, um like she had her astrology chart and her numerology chart on the walls, and I'd be like, what's that, tell me about it. And I kind of like connected through it with her. And I think when you're a kid, anyone who loves you, you associate like whatever you do with them with love, I think, on a subconscious level.
Right.
So I think like that's where my openness to this side of life comes from. And like it's just like, I don't know, like there's people like with their dad and they race cars, and then they're like, like it's
Yeah.
just it's a very subconscious thing. So I had like that imprint, and then like I went in a different direction as a teenager. But then when I graduated college, it was the Great Recession, 2010. I don't know how it was in Europe, but in the US, like nobody was getting jobs, and I had just come out of college.
Right.
And like I studied film. Like I
Oh
was not
man.
supposed to get a job anyway. but like my friends who were like biochemical engineers and computer like and systems engineers, they still were not finding jobs. So like I was just trying to find anything to survive. And there was like a 6-month period where I was running out of money, and I had, for like very complicated reasons, was not trying to get help from my parents in any way. And I was alone, because like I moved cities, so I didn't have a lot of friends where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was just a very traumatic, stressful time where like I was looking for quarters under the bed just to like go eat. um so like at that time I would go to the public library in New York and just go online there.
Wow.
And like,
Well, hold on.
and
You were in New York. That's even
yeah,
more
I was in New
expensive.
York City.
Oh my.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I like, but like, I had a little bit saved so I could pay rent and stuff, and like I would have like one meal a day or whatever. But towards the end, it was very stressful. Anyway, so I would go to jobs, and I had to be very careful not to make my suit dirty because I couldn't do dry cleaning. So I was like very like like, and I like whatever. Anyway, I would go because it was so stressful. I know for a fact that the way that people connect with these spiritual systems is usually during a very stressful time of their lives.
Mm.
If you're in a time where you're dealing with a lot of things and you don't know where it ends, you want something to tell you when it ends. And we all have this thing. We're going through tough times and we imagine like, oh, like it's on the 18th of November that like everything's gonna stop, and I'm gonna get my job, and I'm gonna get my money, and I'm gonna find the love of my life, and then my life will be perfect. We always imagine it this way. There's like a line between the bad and the good, and then we
Right.
get to the good stuff, and then and like everything changes. And that's the attraction to the concept of horoscopes, really. It's
Hmm.
like you are struggling and you want confirmation of how much more time you're going to struggle and
Right.
when the struggle ends. So I start going into a bunch of websites, and then I rediscover numerology. I started looking for my horoscopes because I already have this imprint, and then eventually I find numerology. And for me, what like I found this one numerology site that, I don't know, described me perfectly.
Hmm.
And when it described my months or my days, they were very accurate to a scary level.
Wow.
And then when I finally got a job offer and things changed, I was celebrating by myself in a park called Astoria Park in New York. It's in Queens, but you can
Hmm.
see all of Manhattan. And then I get the email but it was not a smartphone because it was 2010, but I had like it was a very fun phone that had email that like was like an eco phone, and like the notification sound was like a bird chirping, like so I remember it
Nice.
perfectly. And like the email was my daily numerology forecast, and it talked about the end of like a cycle and the end of the struggles.
Mm.
And just the fact that I got it at a very specific time where like I took the job, but I wasn't sure about if it was the right job for me or not.
Yeah.
I'm really summarizing the story, but I did a whole podcast about it, and I tell everything that went beyond that if you want to hear more. But like anyway, like um, it was so aligned, and I was already so spiritual, in not in terms of religion, but in terms of like knowing that there's an order to things, and like there's something out like more deeper in the universe that is driving all of this. That it was a beautiful moment, and I was like, I want to learn more about this.
Mm.
So
Because
I
you got
just started.
confirmation. Because you
Yeah,
got confirmation from
yeah,
what
yeah,
happened to you. That's
exactly.
amazing.
And for years it was a hobby. I wasn't planning to do it as a career. I wasn't planning to be an expert in it. In fact, I never talked about it to friends or family for a while, maybe like the first 3 or 4 years. Part of it was like I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy, because I was really like I was buying all the books, and I was reading, like I would find a book that written in the 70s about numerology, and I would find a book written in 1918 about numerology, and I would look on Amazon, and I would go like I just started collecting all this stuff, and I didn't really share it with anybody, but slowly like it started, like I started talking about it, and on New Year's like I would do my family's charts and stuff. And then after many years of being really dissatisfied in my jobs and not really knowing what I should do for a career, I read a book that I'll summarize in one, like what I learned from the book. I'll summarize in more than words. It says like there's nothing more powerful than just being definite about what you're looking for and sticking to it.
That's my
And
problem. That's my problem.
exactly. And from this book, like it really changed my life. I was like, if I don't pick one thing and just take it until the end of the road, like when I have already experienced everything I can from this one plan, and it could be decades, where I feel like I'm satisfied, I know what this was about, I close the chapter on this, then I'll move on to something else. I made that commitment to myself, and I said like I have to choose one path, and I have to like whatever. And I just decided, on the one hand, I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to start my own business. I always knew
Right.
that. And on the other hand, the only thing I'm passionate about enough to really just spend a decade of my life into is numerology. So I just have to figure out how to make a numerology business.
Right. Right. That's amazing. What's the title of that book, by the way?
It's called Outwitting the Devil, and it's by
Ooh,
Napoleon Hill.
I like that guy. I
Yeah.
like that. But
Yeah.
I've never. Oh yeah, that makes sense that he would say that because I've read a little
Uh-huh.
bit of. What's his other? There's a other book that that's really popular by him, and he alludes to that as well. Okay.
That's the Think and Grow Rich. And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
so he that's the book that made him famous. And
Yeah.
it's a really good book. But there's something about the I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make turn off my notifications because so like Think and Grow Rich is just a famous law of attraction book. And it was very famous in the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm.
For obvious reasons, and it was like the secret of the 20s and the 30s.
Right.
And it's a good book. I like it. I have nothing against it. But the Outwitting the Devil is fascinating because he wrote it and then he said, don't publish. Like he told his family, don't publish this until the next economic crisis. So it was like sealed the manuscript until 2011, and then it was published in 2011
Wow.
with that the Great Recession that was happening at the time. And it's and he knew that in the 30s and 40s they were not going to like it because it was a really religious time. And he talks about the dangers of religion, and he talks about just power and control in politics and religion and all that stuff. And it was like right now it's really obvious, but
Right.
back then it was probably not going to fly. So anyway, it's a conversation. Like he says, I found the devil and I interviewed him. And think about what that means. Whatever that means to you is fine. But I found the devil and I interviewed him and I figured out how to talk to the devil. Obviously, when you read it, you figure out that there's a metaphor there, but he doesn't say it. He says, this is an interview with the devil. I think that the devil, the way he writes it, is kind of like a metaphor for our dark side.
Right.
Like the part of yourself that doesn't want to do anything, that doesn't want to work, that doesn't want to focus, that doesn't want to have an impact with your life, and that's scared, that's insecure, that's like all that. It's just the dark side of you.
Yep.
And how to outwit it, as in like control it and do what you want instead of letting that side of you control you.
I'm
And
sold. I'm sold.
yeah,
I'm gonna read the book.
yeah,
And I didn't realize because I've seen the book, but I never realized that story that it was published
yeah,
so much years later.
yeah. And the story is in the book. You'll read about it in the first few
Mm.
chapters. But yeah,
And it reminds me of Mark Twain did that where he wrote his big biography and then published it 100 years after,
mm-hmm.
and it was a big bestseller. But I never heard that it would be after a big crisis. I guess the
Yeah,
80s aren't considered to be really a big recession because there was something in the 80s I recall, but that wasn't big enough. I guess 2008 to 11, that's
yeah. I mean,
big time.
I think when 2008 happened, everybody knew it was the worst since the Great Depression.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I want to circle back to something because I didn't expect this direction, but it's something
Okay.
that I'm interested as well. Film. So you say you study film because right now I'm in a program that I'm studying economics slash theater. So it's kind of a
Okay.
mishmash of and you can tell by the nature of the double degree that I'm kind of indecisive. I don't know if I want to go in this or that direction. But you studied film exclusively, right?
Mhm.
I think I can tell some of the influence by your because I've seen some of your YouTube videos and it's like you put dramatic music, you put and the edits, the camera angle. I appreciate that. So okay, first of all you decide to go there and then at what point studying film do you decide maybe this is not the thing I really want to do?
Yeah. I think that so I was very nerdy as a teenager, and I just what became obsessed with 1950s and 1960s movies. And I bought all the DVDs and I watched all of them. And then I started reading books about the history, like all this, like it wasn't like, oh, Pulp Fiction or like Star Wars. It was like very classic cinema.
Nice.
And then I got this idea, like I want to write screenplays for movies. And I was super nerdy, so I would write screenplays like on the weekends and like just start writing movies. And I was 15 or 16, and I thought that that's what I always wanted to do. And I remember it was 2002 or 2003, and I remember reading a magazine article that said, in the future, you will be able to distribute movies like you distribute songs nowadays, because you already could download songs from the internet with
Right.
like LimeWire and stuff. And they said this is going to be what movies are like. So the whole studio system in Hollywood will disintegrate, because anybody will be able to make a really cool movie with their own cameras, and it will look just as professional and distribute to anyone they want on the internet. I remember reading that and being like, that sucks, because like there's going to be no more quality in movies anymore.
Well, you
And I
could
was like, I
technically
thought
make a
like,
movie here. You could make a movie on Zoom, basically.
yeah, oh yeah. You can make them. You can use your cell phone cameras. Your cell phone cameras are as good as like digital cameras from 2 years ago, let alone like 10 years ago. It's the craziest thing. But um, like I'm gonna try to condense the story, but like I thought that was like stupid. I was like, I wish I was born in the 40s, because I don't want anybody to do a movie, because like most people don't know how to do movies.
Yeah.
That was my thought at the time. So that's why I picked film. When I graduated, I started to try to, like, when I was looking for jobs, I was trying to look for jobs in like production companies or agencies, either in the film industry in New York or the film industry in LA. And I did a bunch of internships before I graduated. And what I remember about those, and like working in like really well-known offices with like in Hollywood and stuff, and they were very awful people. Like I got
Mm.
yelled at, I got called names. It was abuse, and this is how that world operates. And I never like, I did not like it. I just did not feel comfortable in that environment, but I still wanted to write movies and do movies. And then when this whole story happened and I got a job finally, it was not a job in the film industry. It was a job in a call center,
Right.
where I had to it was just not the same industry, and I needed the money, so I took it. But I was shocked that this call center job ended up being the most amazing job I've ever had, and I had the best time, and I was the happiest person ever. And what it involved was it was like call center manager, so I had to train students to call and ask for money. And like the training part and the motivation part, where it be in front of before a shift happened, I had to like give them a speech and motivate them and talk about like confronting their fears and stuff. I just found the side of myself that I didn't know existed. And it was about motivating and like talking to people about their fears or whatever. And also there was a technology part that I didn't know I was good at. I always thought I was into arts or writing, and that meant that I couldn't do computers and technology. But
Hmm.
in this job, I had to manage the database. And they gave me was like the manual, and you're like, now you have to load the data into the database. And I was like, but I needed the money, so I had to pay attention and I had to learn this. And 6 months later, I'm not just good at it, I'm figuring out new things that I can do with the technology. Like, what if I do this and this and this is like, and like, what if we load the data based on time zone, and then we call
Right.
based on time zone? Like, suddenly we're making more money, not because of the calls, but because of how I'm like dividing the data into different places. Anyway, the whole thing about it was is that I was so focused on things that I knew I was good at, that I was not really exploring other sides of myself. And this economic crisis forced me to do it. When I got out of this job, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that film was too limiting, because there was something else out there. And you know what? Teledipity, I do technology, I write, I do videos, and I do this talking part. So it there is something out there that combines all the things you're good at. It's not like when you say like I have to commit to something, you do, but like you can find something where every other side of you is expressed, and every other like passion that you have, you can do. And that job, I firmly believe, exists for everybody. You can find it if you like look for it, if you trust it, and if you like, I mean, there's a bunch of ifs, but it exists. So like I think me wanting to be like go into film was more me not knowing how to use this part of myself that I was passionate about and turn it into a career. And now that I know how to do that, I'm not interested in film anymore because these sides of myself are being expressed in this little thing that I found. So I don't care about Hollywood anymore. I'm writing. I have an audience. I
Yeah.
have technology, like, you know. So yeah.
Right. It seems like yeah, when there's a lot of like there was a lot of Me Too stories and all that from Hollywood, and that
Uh-huh.
it does seem like it's a hard industry, and also a lot of people want to get in. And
Mhm.
but were you uh like a producer of us, like assistant of a producer on a movie, or was it like a small scale production, like a TV?
My internships, two of my internships were in agencies, so like agents that represent actors or writers,
Oh, I see.
and like Ari Gold in Entourage. Did
Don't
you
know
watch
that.
Entourage? Okay, whatever. And the other was a production company, and it was maybe I shouldn't say because that's where I got some really bad abuse, but like a famous producer that like produced famous movies, like really famous movies,
Hmm.
and like the person he hired to handle his office, and then they got me as an intern. Like that was like I've never been talked to. Well, maybe, but like it was abuse.
Yeah.
Like they would like make me make mistakes and then yell at me for them. It was the weirdest thing. So anyway,
Wow.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad you got out of that business. That's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah.
And I think people stay in it because sometimes because they really want to progress and whatever, even if it's not film, if it's something else, or they feel like they have no choice.
Yeah.
So okay, talking about choice, like the only thing I know about the numerology for me, off the top of my head, is um, I think a life path number, which is 11. That's the
Mhm.
only thing I know. And
Okay.
my birthday is 14, so I heard that's a 5, but we talked before, and
Mm.
my knowledge of numerology is very limited apparently. And I had
Did
just saw.
you did you make a Teledipity profile or not?
No, I have to be
Because if you
honest here.
do it, you'll get your freaking numerology chart and you'll read all about it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And it's free. You don't have to pay anything.
Ah, okay, now I know. See, that's why I do this, so I learn things.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as numerology is obviously because you read many books, so there's probably different approaches to the same
Mhm,
subject.
mhm.
Because when we talked before, I told you that I read two short books, and they were saying that it's very things were very superficial in that book. It was like if you are, let's say my number is a 5 because I'm born on 14th, and I'm living in a house that's number 2. That's supposed to be not so compatible because you're more compatible with number 6 and what 9 1 or something. So if you live in that kind of house, that's gonna be great. So let's break it down. How is that helpful or not helpful to know that?
Stupid, 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 stupid. Not helpful, not helpful, not helpful, not helpful.
Okay.
So, um, there is a very, there is a huge difference
Mm,
between spirituality and superstition. And with all spirit forms of spirituality, whether it's a religion or a spiritual system like astrology or numerology or crystals or whatever else, it attracts both spiritual and superstitious people.
mm,
What superstition is like, or the way I would describe it, is this view of the world where bad things can happen at any time and you have to protect yourself from them. So, like, if you believe that this is what this dimension is, where like catastrophe can happen at any second, and if you choose the wrong house, like you'll ruin your life. If you choose the wrong job, you'll ruin your life. If you choose the wrong partner, you'll ruin your life. Then you like, of course, you'll pick up a numerology book and you'll see it in with these eyes, where like there's good and there's bad, and you have to avoid the bad at all costs, or you'll attract bad things for yourself. Anybody who writes about numbers like that is a superstitious person They may be describing some aspects of numerology correctly, but they're injecting their own energy of superstition
Right.
into the system that doesn't belong there, because there's nothing about original numerology that talks about bad numbers or bad things that can happen to you with bad numbers. Like the whole thing about Friday the 13th is not numerology. And the
Okay.
13 being a bad number, that's not numerology. But any superstitious person will grab on to any spiritual system. They'll also say you shouldn't date Scorpios. And like I know astrologers, that's not how it works.
Right.
But like if your worldview is like that, then you'll grab like it's the same with religion. You'll grab onto like, oh, if I make God angry, he'll punish me.
Right.
That's not the universe we live in, really.
Another thing I just
Yeah.
remembered in the book, is said that the author changed her name to make
Mm.
it to make the energy better,
Mhm.
and this was done strictly on numerological terms. And again, I think you would say the same thing, right? And that is
Well,
superstition or
yes,
not.
and
Okay.
like there's good reasons to change your name for numerology, and there's
Hmm.
bad reasons to change your name for numerology. I'm not sure what her reasons were, but the thing with changing your name is that so like a numerology chart is divided into two sections: your name, your birth date. Your full name at birth talks about the history of your soul in previous lifetimes. So, how you arrived into this incarnation, like your personality, your talents, your weaknesses, the things you're not good at, the things you are good at, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Your birthday talks about what you came to do in this lifetime, what experiences you came to live through, and what you came to learn in order to take your soul to the next level. So, obviously, nobody can change their birth date, but
Right.
people can change their names. Unfortunately, and this is something a lot of people don't understand, is that your full name at birth also cannot be changed, because your full name at birth, what's your full name at birth? You can change it a million times, but you still have the same full name at birth. And that's where your soul history is represented in your full name at birth. Now, if you change your name later in life, it doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect. It just won't affect your chart. It has a different influence, and
Oh.
it's about this. So like your numerology chart will always be will always be your numerology chart. But let's say you
Mm.
want to change your name. What you change is not your vibration as a soul, but the vibration of how you present yourself to others.
Right.
And that has an effect, because you I think like everybody can like has experienced this without numerology. You hear a name or you read a name, and there is some intuition about the personality of that name. And it happens with business names too, like Coca-Cola, or like what, like, because every letter has a vibration, a name has a vibration too, and you feel it. Like I'll like this person, or like I like this name, or I like the city, and it's because of the name or whatever. You feel a vibration from a collection of letters or a name. So if you present yourself in a different name, you change the vibration of what you tell others you are. But
Right.
that doesn't mean you change the vibration of what you actually are.
Okay, so let's say somebody calls me by a different name.
Uh-huh.
That's a different thing. So a lot of times when I was living in Canada, US, or Scotland, I would be called Matt instead of
Uh-huh.
Matthias, and this is and sometimes they'd spell it M-A-T, and sometimes they would say M-A-T-T.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's already a couple of different things. Or sometimes they would say Mad Jazz. So is there a difference between the way people in numerology, the way people call you, and the way things are written down?
Um, the written down is important.
Hmm.
But whatever changes there are, it doesn't change who you are. It
Right.
just changes what other people think you are. So it comes more in play. Like there is something to see when you're talking about nicknames, but it really comes into play when you're thinking about a professional name that you want to present to the world for some sort of business reason. or artistic reason, like if you have a pseudonym as a writer. That's where it really like there's stuff to look at numerology wise. But in a nickname, all I'm really talking about is like how like what those friends who called you Matt thought you were in terms of like personality characteristics.
Okay.
It really has no influence on what happens to you or who you are. It's just how you're read by others, how others perceive you.
That's interesting. Okay. Because I've had some other guests that were maybe they would disagree with you in some way that the way the name sounds, they would say that that's important and all that. But anyway, I'm not gonna go into that.
But I think the like the way this name sounds is important because you hear the vibration. But like the fact that some people thought it was written with two T's is reflective of how those people saw you.
Right.
They were perceiving the personality of Matt with two T's, and the people who wrote it with one T were perceiving the personality of Matt with one T. How important those differences are is minuscule.
Okay.
Like it's not worth your time thinking about. If you're talking about like you're going to do paintings and you want to know how you like your artistic name, that like let's think about that. Like how you want, what personality you want your name to be in, and how you want to like, or if you're going to be an actor, if you're going to be a right, like, or if you just are going to have a business and like you put your middle name or not or whatever. Yes, think about it and make changes based on numerology.
Right.
But like deciding what nickname to go by, I think it's a waste of time. It doesn't matter numerology wise.
So business name, that's very important.
Yeah.
So do you advise businesses, do they contact you and they like, we're choosing a name and
I hate that part of numerology so much.
really?
I just hate it. Like there's some, so like there's a lot of, and it always happens organically. I never planned it, but there's a lot of users of my website that email me, and sometimes those conversations turn into friendships. So I say I have like 10 really great friends that came from the website, and I've never even met them in real life, but we have Zoom calls and whatever.
Yeah.
And like most of those people will eventually text me or WhatsApp me or like, oh, I'm going to have a baby. What name? Or I want a business. I have 3 names. One is a 3, one is a 4, one is a 5. Which one should I choose to be successful? Oh my God. I cannot stand that. Not because I don't believe there's differences, but because I think that it's more important to choose the name that is right for you than to engineer it with numerology. I engineered my business name with numerology. I engineered my professional name with numerology, but because I can't help it, because I'm like, I think that way all the time. But if you are not a numerologist, trying to say like, oh, I need an 8 business because I want it to be successful, or I want a 1 child because I want him to be a leader, is worse than just not thinking about it. So I like people ask me more for superstitious reasons than for spiritual reasons. They just want to avoid like a bad number that they don't realize. So like, is this name correct? Is that name correct? It's not going to happen. And like there's no number that will make your business successful. There's no number that will make your business fail. It's just about how the business is perceived. And then if we sit down and say like, of these 3 names, this is the perception, this is the perception, this is the perception, and you like one of them, then it makes sense. But that requires like an hour-long conversation, and I can't do it via text. And like, you know,
I'm also thinking it could be numerologically, it could be a good number, but the name itself is like, maybe it's a foreign name, or it's a name, let's say for a restaurant or something, that people are gonna be like, can't even pronounce, or something like that. There's other reasons. There's not just a numerological number. So that's important.
Also, there's the question of engineering the universe, because at the end of the day, why do you have the perfect name? Why do I have the perfect name? Is it because our parents read numerology books, or is it because they chose the one that felt right for
Right.
them?
That's a great point.
And why were we born in the right day? Nobody said like, oh, he has to be born on the 15th because like he has to have this numerology. It just happened. So the way that the universe works perfectly is when you just do what feels right for you.
Right. Okay, so let's go now to what's important in numerology. Obviously, if I say a life path, that's important, I would assume. Okay. So life path, I think, is added up by the birth date, right? And then there's another number that's from the name, and that's what number is that?
Expression.
Okay.
That's when I was telling you about like your soul's history. I mean, a numerology chart has like 60 sections, all different numbers. So I don't think we can go through all of them.
Right.
But the main ones are life path, expression. So life path is what you came to learn in this life. Expression is who you are now or how you arrived into this life, talents, personality stuff. Soul urge is the energy that attracts you the most. So like when you talk about the soul urge number, you like, and you speak of that vibration, it's really like like when you see people, when they have fantasies, it is about this vibration. So like people who have a 5 soul urge, they are always thinking about traveling. They're always thinking about moving to a different country. They're always thinking about doing something else than what they're doing right now, because the 5 is a vibration that talks about change and adventure and surprises. A person that with a 4 soul urge are always thinking about like order and planning and practicality and having things organized and everything in the right place, and just, you know, like a lot of physical like, so it's
Right.
the energy that attracts you. And then personality number is when I'm talking about changing your name, is how others perceive you. So when people read your name, what that perception is, even if it's not really who you are. But there's a lot of like, when I do readings for people, I'll be like, and I describe the personality number, I'll say, people think you're like this, but you know that you're not like this. And everybody's like, yes, I don't know why people think I'm so organized because I'm a mess, or I don't know why people think I'm a leader because I'm not like, it comes from this. And then the birthday, which is the day of the month in which you were born, has a very small effect. It has some effect, very small effect on the personality, but the big effect is in the middle chapter of your life, from your early 30s to your late 50s. And that's the vibration that rules in that very important time, which is your entire adulthood.
Okay.
And those are the main parts of a numerology chart, but there's like 10 more. No, like 20 more. So.
Okay, but those are the main ones.
Exactly.
What is the life expression? You said practicality. It doesn't say, what is it? What is a 9?
A 9 is an energy that talks about, so every number has a positive and a negative like expression.
Oh, okay.
So you like what, like there's a balanced 9, there's a negative 9, and there's a positive 9, and it's all in a spectrum. So the spectrum of 9 is a spectrum of sacrifice for the greater good, doing things that don't benefit you, just living in a form where like you are empathetic with everybody's struggles and you don't judge anybody for their struggles, and you forgive people who hurt you no matter what they did. So like that's a very quick explanation, but people in the negative side of 9 can't do any of that. People in the like, so there's like a balance. Anyway, great examples of 9s: Gandhi, Mother Teresa, they were both 9s.
And in their life expression. Wow. So it could signify your potential for spiritual growth, you're saying?
All numbers are signifying your potential for spiritual growth. It's just spiritual growth in different aspects of life, because there's the self-sacrifice aspect of life, but then there's also the individualist aspect of life. There's that's no more positive or negative. Like, you also have to take care of yourself. You can't be taking care of others all the time.
Right.
There's the exploratory aspect of life. There's the creative aspect of life. So like every number signifies one of those. And we're talking about the 9 is the self-sacrifice aspect of life.
Wow. So this is incredibly complex. Sounds like astrology as well. Like a lot of people
Uh-huh.
don't realize it's
Yeah,
incredibly complex. It's not just the 12 signs. Now you have to
exactly.
at least the moon sign, the ascendant, and all the planets, and then depends on the time you're born. And
Hmm.
um,
Yep.
so we don't have that in numerology, right? It's
What?
not dependent on time.
There's nothing about the time you're born that affects
Hmm.
your numerology chart. No.
Okay. Let's talk about years, because this was introduced to me by my good friend Hannah. She said that she was talking about me as relating to my year.
Uh,
She said something about this year is gonna be this for you, but I didn't quite get. Well, what does that mean? So if you can
so,
explain that.
mhm. Remember when I said your birthday talks about the experiences you're going to go through in this life?
Mhm.
So from the digits in your birthday, you extrapolate this kind of triangle that talks about like the lesson you're supposed to learn in your life, the chapters in which you advance towards that lesson, and then it goes down like a fractal. Chapters as in 3 cycles of your life, chapters as in 9-year cycles of your life, and then at the month level and at the day level. They're also at the week level and then at the day level. And there's a ruling vibration for each period of time. There's a ruling vibration for your day. There's a ruling vibration for your month. There's a ruling vibration for your year. There's a ruling vibration for your 9-year cycle. There's a ruling vibration for your, et cetera, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
yeah.
So when you talk about your year, and this is different for everybody, you're talking about the ruling vibration of 2020 for you and what 2020 is about for you.
Right. Which is so it's different for everybody, obviously, because we're
Mm-hmm.
not born and we're not don't have the same names.
Exactly.
So obviously
Exactly.
it's gonna be different. Um,
Exactly.
so when people come to you, do they also seek um, how does a relationship consulting work? So let's say
Mm-hmm.
you meet somebody and then so do they I imagine they have to give you their exact name and their exact birth date, and that's all you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So, question. I know that you have some knowledge of astrology.
Yeah.
Do you base your relationship decisions on astrology or not?
Uh, Not really. No.
Okay, that's the same. Because here's the problem with that. Like, if you go to my site or the app, you can buy compatibility reports. And I'll talk about how those personalities combine, what kinds of conflicts they might have,
Hmm.
where like the relationship's going to be really fun, where it's not going to be really fun, all that stuff. But I can't tell you this is a good relationship or this is a bad relationship. Numerology can't read that in the same way that numerology can't read this is a good person or this is a bad person, because Hitler had a numerology chart and Ted Bundy had a numerology chart and Jack the Ripper had a numerology chart. So just because somebody has numbers that are compatible with you doesn't mean they're going to treat you right. Doesn't mean that their relationship has legs. Doesn't mean you should stay with them. So a numerology measures kind of like a person from a very detached point of view, and you cannot look at where they are in terms of soul evolution level. So if you're going to read if you're going to read the numbers compatibility for you and your lover, read it in terms of like, how can I make this relationship better? Don't read it in terms of like, should I be in this relationship or not? That's more a decision you should be making without any spiritual system.
Right. So you have to use some kind of common sense.
Exactly.
Otherwise you're
Exactly.
just like, oh, these
Exactly.
signs, looks good, and then
Exactly.
like, okay,
Yeah. How many times have you heard somebody say, I don't date Scorpios?
I've heard that a couple of times. Yeah.
I feel so bad. Like I don't want to like I feel bad for people who think like that, because I'm not an astrologer, but I know it does not work that way. That's not how it's supposed to be.
But you know
You
what
can
though?
date any sign. It's not like that's not how these systems are supposed to be used.
You know what though? It's like I think some people come with it from an experience point of view. They're like it's not, it doesn't come from astrology per se, but then after they've dated somebody and they're like,
Yeah.
no, I'm never gonna do that again, and
But
they
the
point
thought,
it
yeah,
towards
yeah,
that, you know?
yeah. But the thought that, like, for example, if you just date narcissists, then you might assign narcissistic traits to Scorpios when really it's just about narcissism. It has nothing to do with Scorpios. So, like, just the idea that because of your limited experience of 2 or 3 Scorpios, that you would judge all Scorpios on the planet based on them is not how it works.
Yeah, it might be daddy issues that you have to look
Uh-huh.
at, not just
Exactly.
numerology,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Okay. So when people come to you for your I know you mentioned this before, but when they come to you for a longer consultation,
Uh-huh.
so do you advise them on what kind of career would be good for them? Is that something you can do for with
Yeah.
numerology?
Yeah. This is a part of numerology where it depends on the person. There are charts that are so clear what they should be doing professionally, where it's like, oh my god, like this is the mission. And there's charts where it's not that easy to see.
Right.
And the reason I say that, it's because there's lives that revolve around your career and there's lives that do not. So sometimes I'll see a chart where what I'm reading is like, this person really, like, their life is about learning to be independent and think for themselves and just make their own decisions. And they can do that in any career. It doesn't matter what they're working in. But then there's all others where it's like, your life is about expressing your creativity without fear
Mm-hmm.
and using it for some sort of humanitarian cause. Now that's pretty specific. And like, I can, like, I'll read that, and if they're already following that, they'll be like, oh my god, it's in my numerology chart. And if they're not, they're like, I've always wanted to do that. I've always wanted to do that. So like, you like, it just depends on the chart is what I'm trying to say. You can't read it like a clear, like, life mission statement from all charts, but from some you can.
Okay, that makes sense because some
Yeah.
people, and it also seems like in life, some people are more full in what they're doing, and some people are just means to an end to get
Exactly.
money,
Exactly. Yeah.
and then they go
Yeah.
home and the dogs,
Yeah.
kids,
And the real life lessons happen outside of their work life.
right.
They're a family stuff there. So yes, so it's not always about, like, your impact on the world, but sometimes it is.
Um, talk about we're in an interesting year because there's a lot of things happened this year,
Mhm.
and is this because on the surface, if I would just take the year, it's 2020, so that's a 4. Would that be
Mhm.
is that significant in any way?
It's a 4 for the planet.
Right.
It's not a 4 for you.
Oh,
So,
right,
like,
right.
we're talking about the numerology chart of planet Earth versus the numerology chart for matches, and those are two different things. So I can tell you all about 2020 in the sense of, like, what it means for the world to be going through coronavirus and all this stuff. But the 2020 doesn't affect you. And as you can see, like, there's different people have different experiences in 2020. Like, there's people that, like, their businesses took off and they became really rich. And then there's people who had to get divorced. And then there's people who lost their job. And that comes more from their personal year than the fact that it's 2020.
Okay. Um, talk about the prediction business. Is
Uh-huh.
there any reliable? No, okay, maybe I shouldn't ask reliability, but can you indicate with numerology what might happen as far as world events? Or you already saying no, like elections, things of that nature? Because it's highly unpredictable, and also I guess it's hard to do that as well with astrology. So, right,
And I mean, you read astrologers online that are very specific about their predictions. And I don't know astrology, but I don't think you could do that. Like, and I don't like, so where in 2016,
Hmm.
after the last US election,
Yeah,
I was very confused, and I was like, what's this? What's going to happen with this? Where's this going? So I start looking at the planet numerology chart, and I start looking at like centuries and like 1700s and 16, like just trying to figure it out. And from this huge study that I did numerology wise, I made a video on YouTube where I said, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know like what exactly this is, but the vibrations between 2017 and 2025 are very unique in the sense that they always change, like have a permanent, like they change the world permanently in some way. And there was World War II under the same vibration. There was the 1860s where like a bunch of like changes in South America, and there was a civil war in the US and all this stuff. Then there was the Enlightenment, and et cetera, et cetera. Like it's a very specific and very intense vibration where things that almost never happen suddenly happen. Now, I never said, oh, we're going to have another world war. I said, it's just going to be very intense and very unique, and there will be permanent changes. I didn't know it was going to be a pandemic. I did not know it was going to be a virus, et cetera, et cetera. But it makes sense in like under that description. Mm-hmm. And I could have never have made that description 10 years ago because that's not what the number said.
Right.
But there you have it. So like there's just, you can describe the vibration and what kinds of things happen under that vibration, but you can't say this exactly is going to happen. Same with your personal year. I can describe like under this vibration, these kinds of things happen. You feel these kinds of ways. You learn these kinds of lessons. This is how I can describe your year, but I'm not going to say you're going to like, I never say you're going to meet your soulmate. Never. And some people want me to do that. I can't. I never say like you're going to lose your job. Some people want me to. I can't. And then people email me like, when am I going to get a job? I don't know. I can't see that in the numbers, but I can tell you that a very important chapter of your life ends this month, and a very important chapter of your life starts this month, and the vibration really shifts. And this new vibration is about like taking a step forward towards X, Y, or Z. So that I can do, but right. I can't like predicting events is not something that can really happen under numerology.
So, did you say between 2017 and 2025 is going to be a significant period?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. This is really interesting because I was reading a book about glamour by Alice Bailey, and she said predicted that 2025 is going to be the year when the type of the energy of the glamour, because the glamour apparently is a specific energy in the world, is going to change to something. I'm assuming lighter. She was saying that it's gonna change in a positive direction. So I'm assuming that
it's perfectly aligned with numerology. And you know what? When I was so we met because of Lola. She's an astrologer, right. And she bought a reading with me, and we talked for a long time about numerology versus astrology, and it was a really interesting conversation. When I told her that, she said, actually, that aligns with astrology too. Something about 2025 in astrology. I don't know what she was talking about.
Okay.
But like, it's funny how you read this from different angles, and they all talk about kind of like very similar dates and similar things that are supposed to be happening right now.
Wow. I think that, but even this year is kind of like this election is going to be drawn out, I think. So
I have no idea. All I can say is that like whoever wins, it's not going to change. We're still going to be under this vibration of like what can I recognize about this vibration? The inability, like the polarization, and the inability to decide what truth is, and the conspiracy theories, and the fake news stuff. And this is not like because you're not an American and I'm not an American. Americans think it's only happening in the US, but it's all over Europe, all over Latin America, all over Africa. Like it's a global thing that's happening. And all of that and the chaos that comes from that, it's not going to stop no matter who wins. So Not until 2025.
Right. So this is gonna be
More shit.
more shit.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
I have some friends that think that there's gonna be a lot of corruption that's gonna come to the surface and whatnot. But who
Yeah,
knows?
that I can say. Yeah.
It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah.
So for people that this is a practical question for people that want to learn about numerology, what would be the a good like, let's say 3 or 5 books that are really good to start your journey on numerology?
So I like there's Michael Goodwin's books. You can find them on Amazon. There's 2 volumes.
Mm-hmm.
That's the perfect introduction. There's a guy called Juno Jordan who has 1 book that's really good. I'll send you the links if you want, so you can put them in the episode notes.
Yeah, I'll put it.
And like a good another good source is there's a Dutch guy by the name of Hans de Koos, who is probably the most famous one in terms of like, not everybody knows him as like he's the most famous numerologist, but he created this software that every astrology site uses when they sell numerology reports. So if you go to A or B or C website and you buy a numerology report, you're buying a Hans de Koos report. And like, he's really good. His reports, I sell them on my site too, because you buy a license and you can resell them. So he's really good numerologist. And I learned a lot, not just from like the book that he wrote, which is really just a summary, but like from like using his software to pull a bunch of reports from a bunch of the people that I know. And then like there's a lot of like self teaching that you have to do as well. It's just kind of like, because all the books disagree on something, and then you have to decide what you believe. So, there's another 19. Well, I have a bunch of like, I'll send you a list.
Okay.
And another famous one who's really, really good, who I don't like, he doesn't call it numerology, and he doesn't talk about Pythagorean numerology. Like maybe he mentions it, I don't know. But when I read his books, I know this is numerology. Like I know it, but he like I get the feeling sometimes that he wants to pretend that he invented it when it's really like a 2,000-year-old system, but he's really good. Dan Millman. There's a book called The Life You Were Born to Live, and it's a numerology.
You see, when you said that name, I like that name.
Yeah. Find his book.
Right. So let's talk about spirituality, because is there anything that people in numerology that's typical of their spiritual orientation, or is it anybody from any orientation is interested in numerology?
I think any orientation.
Mm-hmm.
I think any spiritual person will like a spiritual system. And I think that I think it's religiously agnostic, numerology.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even non-spiritual people will start connecting with spirituality through numerology, because it doesn't have a lot of stigma, and it doesn't have a lot of like unfairly negative connotations.
Right.
So if you talk to somebody who's spiritually open, but not complete, like not like us, but like kind of like starting to get into meditation stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
and you tell them, and you just say the word Mercury retrograde, they sometimes get turned off because they're like, no, I don't believe in stars and planets. But with numbers, it's much easier to like kind of like start into that. Somebody's ringing my doorbell. Okay. I just need to check who it is. Sorry about that.
All right. Sorry.
¿Quién? ¿Quién? No, gracias.
There we go. You appeared again. So, yeah. Okay, talk about the. I've already mentioned a lot of.
Let me 1 second.
Okay.
This is really weird what's just happening. 1 second.
There's a cool effect. There we go. You appeared.
Sorry about
back.
that. Yes.
By the way, very nice dining room. I really...
Yeah, it's Zoom background, but it's a really realistic Zoom background.
Yeah, I'm sure people that are watching this in video can tell that this is and both my space here and yours, MySpace. Imagine that. I said MySpace. That hasn't been in use for such a long time. Yeah, it's not a high grade production. It's a production that's for the people. We try to keep it grounded. Okay. So I know I mentioned a lot of misconception about numerology. Is there anything else that I missed that you think people think numerology is, but it's really not? Or have we covered everything pretty much?
No, I think as long as you don't use it, like I think everything boils down to, are you spiritual or are you superstitious?
Right.
Because superstition is, I don't want to live in a 5 house. Superstition is, it's going to be a bad year because it's a 4 year. Superstition is, I don't want to date this person because this is a 2 person. If you, or like, I want to change my name because I want like I want a lucky number. If you're not doing superstitious things with numerology, you're good.
Okay, cool. For the guests that want to go on your website, what kind of services do you offer for people?
So on Teledipity, you can pull up your full numerology chart interpreted by me from the sources of all the books that I've read. Completely free. There's 8 or 9 different sections. It's a long read. You can't read it in one sitting because there's a lot of things to read, and it's completely free. You create your profile and you have your password and everything. If you log back into the site, you'll also find your yearly forecast and your monthly forecast, also free. So every month you'll read like what to expect from October or December, just like a horoscope. Mm-hmm. And in that, I separate a forecast into 2 parts: the written part and the podcast. So every month you get a podcast about the next month in your life, and it's like 10 minutes. It's not very long. But like in the written version, I just describe like what the vibration is and what kinds of things might happen. And in the podcast, I talk about like the lesson that the number vibration is about and what, like, how to reflect on it from more like a self-improvement point of view. So it's more motivational, and it's more like, it's just cool content. All of that is free. It's also available in the Teledipity app, App Store and Play Store. But also there's like a premium membership where you can get weekly forecasts, and like book summaries, book recommendations, not like about numerology, but about like a really good book that aligns with what you should be learning this month of your life, stuff like that. So there's a lot of premium content, but there's a lot of just free content too to get hooked in. And a big part of the system too is that I send you emails when you're supposed to receive them. So like it's completely like it's based on where you are. So if I say like, if I decide that you're in a 5 month and a 3 day and you should be reading about a topic today, I'll send it to you. And so I call them serendipitous emails. And it's usually like I'll summarize like X philosopher said this, and it applies to your life in this way. So think about this today. And people love that because like there are sometimes like if something's going wrong in a day and you get an email that explains it perfectly, it really changed your thinking about that problem or the opportunities behind it. And you usually get at least one a month, if not more, apart from your monthly forecast and everything else.
That sounds great. And I'll create my. I think in the past I've done some numerology stuff, but it seems like I've forgotten most of the number except the life path number. I do remember that.
Well, it's interesting because you're an 11-5. I'm also an 11-5 in different ways, but
Okay. I think my name number is also 11, if I'm not mistaken.
oh wow.
Uh, but yeah, be that as it may. So
If your name is an 11 and your life path is an 11,
yeah,
like I wouldn't be too worried that you haven't figured out what you want to do yet, because double 11s are usually late bloomers. So the really exciting part of their life happens after they've had a lot of experience. So
well, I've gathered some experience, but not a well. I've
all I'm saying is that like don't rush it because you're not
right.
late if you're a double 11.
Well, yeah, because yeah, that kind of makes me feel better because I started the university at age 35, basically. So,
It's fine.
okay. Lastly, I want to talk about touch upon this self-actualization because I think a lot of people nowadays want to better themselves, and is this something that I think we already kind of touched upon this. Is this something that numerology can point them in the direction and say, this is your weakness, this is your strength, and you can work on these traits and try to avoid these traits or these people, things of that nature? Is that possible through numerology?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So, can you, okay, simply put, can you through numerology basically find out what kind of traits you need to focus on, what are your weaknesses, and what would be your strengths if you focus on them?
Yeah, numerology can tell you that for sure. Um, numerology chart will tell you um, if you if you are artistic, if you're good with visuals, if you're a good with like talking or writing, if you're good at analyzing things really from a deep perspective, if you're a good planner, an organizer, if you're a good leader, if you were an enormous empath or a healer, that kind of stuff. Yeah, it comes. You can see that on the chart. And if you create a Teledipity profile, it'll tell you all of it.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good pitch. I'm gonna definitely check it out. Anyway, this was great doing podcast with you. Thank you, Lola, for recommending, connecting us, and yeah, thank you so much for being on. And
My pleasure.
thank you, listeners, for either listening or watching. Thank you.
Awesome.